In 1964, the FBI sent Martin Luther King Jr. an anonymous letter. It called him a fraud, accused him of affairs, and ended with a clear message. There is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. 34 days later, King would receive the Nobel Peace Prize. The FBI wanted him to commit suicide before that happened. This wasn't a rogue agent. This was COINTELPRO, the FBI's systematic program to disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize civil rights leaders, anti-war activists, and anyone J. Edgar Hoover considered a threat to America. And it was all illegal. March 8, 1971. A group calling themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania. They stole every document they could carry, over 1,000 files. What they found would expose one of the most extensive domestic surveillance and disruption programs in American history. The documents revealed a code word that appeared again and again: COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program, a secret operation that had been running since 1956, targeting American citizens who were exercising their constitutional rights. The Citizens Commission sent copies to newspapers. The Washington Post published them. The New York Times followed. And suddenly, the FBI's secret war on dissent was public. But the story of COINTELPRO starts earlier, much earlier, with a man who would run the FBI for 48 years and use it as his personal weapon against anyone who challenged his vision of America. J. Edgar Hoover didn't just run the FBI. He was the FBI. And what he created was something far more dangerous than a law enforcement agency. The untouchable director. J. Edgar Hoover became director of the FBI in 1924 at age 29. He would hold that position until his death in 1972, 48 years. 8 presidents served during his tenure. All feared him. Why? Because Hoover kept files. Secret files on everyone who mattered. Presidents, senators, Supreme Court justices, civil rights leaders, celebrities, journalists. Files containing affairs, financial improprieties, sexual orientation, any information that could be used for leverage. Presidents couldn't fire him because he had dirt on them. Congress couldn't investigate him because he had dirt on them. He was untouchable, and he used that power to pursue his obsessions. Hoover's worldview. Hoover saw communists everywhere. In the 1950s, during the Red Scare, this made him a hero. He testified before Congress about communist infiltration. He wrote books warning about the communist threat. He built the FBI's power by positioning it as America's defense against subversion. But Hoover's definition of subversion was broad, very broad. It included anyone who criticized the FBI, anyone who advocated for civil rights too aggressively, anyone who opposed the Vietnam War, anyone who challenged traditional American values, anyone who organized protests or demonstrations, anyone Hoover personally disliked. And by the 1960s, the civil rights movement was at the top of his list. The obsession with MLK. Hoover hated Martin Luther King Jr. He called him the most dangerous Negro in America. Why? Because King was effective. He was leading a movement that was actually changing America, and he criticized the FBI for not protecting civil rights workers in the South. That criticism made it personal. Hoover decided King had to be destroyed, not arrested, not prosecuted, destroyed, discredited, driven from public life, and if possible, driven to suicide. This wasn't about law enforcement. This was about revenge, and Hoover had the entire FBI apparatus to carry it out. COINTELPRO started in 1956, but it escalated dramatically in the 1960s. The methods used were shocking in their illegality and creativity. COINTELPRO wasn't one program. It was multiple operations targeting different groups, but the tactics were consistent. infiltrate, disrupt, discredit, and neutralize. Method 1. Infiltration and surveillance. The FBI planted informants in nearly every significant activist organization. The Communist Party USA, the original target. The Black Panther Party. Students for a Democratic Society, SDS. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, MLK's organization. Anti-Vietnam War groups. Women's liberation groups. American Indian movement. These weren't just passive observers. Informants often became leaders, pushing organizations toward more radical actions that would justify FBI crackdowns. The FBI also conducted extensive electronic surveillance. Illegal wiretaps on King's phones, hotel rooms, home SCLC offices. Hidden microphones in meeting spaces. Mail opening and copying. Physical surveillance, following activists everywhere. All of this was illegal. The Fourth Amendment prohibits warrantless searches. The FBI did it anyway, then claimed national security if caught. Method 2. Psychological warfare. The FBI sent anonymous letters designed to create paranoia and distrust within organizations, convince activists their colleagues were informants, suggest romantic partners were cheating, threaten families, encourage self-doubt and fear. The MLK suicide letter, the most infamous example. In 1964, the FBI sent King a package containing 1. An anonymous letter calling him a fraud and evil. 2. A copy of an audio recording allegedly containing evidence of King's extramarital affairs. 3. A clear suggestion. There is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. You are done. The implication was explicit. Kill yourself before we destroy you. The timing was calculated. 34 days before King would receive the Nobel Peace Prize. The FBI wanted him dead before that honor. King's wife Coretta opened the package. King showed it to advisors. They concluded it came from the FBI. But what could they do? Complain to the FBI about the FBI. Method 3. Disinformation and smear campaigns. The FBI created and distributed false information to media outlets feeding stories to friendly journalists, employers trying to get activists fired, landlords trying to get activists evicted, donors trying to dry up funding, members of organizations creating internal conflicts, cartoons and fake publications. The FBI created cartoons depicting Black Panther leaders as violent thugs. They distributed fake newsletters in the name of activist groups, containing inflammatory statements designed to alienate supporters. The Jean Seberg case. Actress Jean Seberg supported the Black Panthers financially. The FBI planted a story with a gossip columnist suggesting her pregnancy was by a Black Panther member. It wasn't. The false story contributed to her mental breakdown. She later committed suicide. Method 4. Encouraging violence. The FBI didn't just monitor violence, they encouraged it. Gangs versus Panthers. In Chicago, the FBI sent anonymous letters to street gang leaders claiming the Black Panthers were planning to kill them. They sent letters to Panthers claiming gangs were planning attacks. They wanted the groups to fight each other. The split letters. The FBI sent forged letters between Black Panther leaders designed to create rifts. Letters suggesting one leader was stealing money. Letters accusing another of being an informant. They wanted the organization to tear itself apart. Method 5. Illegal arrests and prosecution. When disruption wasn't enough, the FBI manufactured criminal cases, planted evidence, encouraged informants to perjure themselves, withheld exculpatory evidence, conducted illegal raids. The goal wasn't justice, it was neutralization. Keep activists tied up in court, drain their resources with legal fees, imprison them on any pretext. The tactics were bad enough. But what happened in Chicago in December 1969 showed how far the FBI was willing to go. Fred Hampton was 21 years old and chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party. He was charismatic, intelligent, and effective. He'd organized a free breakfast program for children. He'd brokered a peace treaty between Chicago's rival gangs. He was building a rainbow coalition of Black, Latino, and poor white activists. The FBI considered him extremely dangerous, not because he was violent, but because he was effective at organizing. The informant, William O'Neill, infiltrated the Chicago Panthers in 1968. He became Hampton's bodyguard and head of security. He was also an FBI informant, paid hundreds of dollars per week. O'Neill provided the FBI with floor plans of Hampton's apartment, information about who would be present on specific nights, Hampton's schedule and movements. In November 1969, O'Neill drugged Hampton with a powerful barbiturate. The raid. December 4, 1969, 4:45 a.m. 14 Chicago police officers raided Hampton's apartment. They fired over 90 shots. The Panthers inside fired once, possibly an involuntary muscle contraction from a dying man's finger. Fred Hampton was shot twice in the head at close range while sleeping in his bed. The barbiturate O'Neill gave him meant he never woke up. Mark Clark, another Panther, was also killed. 4 other Panthers were wounded. The cover-up. Police claimed they'd come under heavy fire and returned it. They charged the surviving Panthers with attempted murder. But evidence told a different story. Ballistics showed Panthers fired maybe 1 shot. Police fired 90 plus. Hampton's bed showed he'd been shot while lying down. Forensics indicated 2 shots to the head from close range. Assassination, not a firefight. The warning shots police claimed to have fired never happened. The FBI had provided the floor plan. The FBI had provided the intelligence. The FBI had drugged Hampton, and the FBI-backed operation had executed him. The aftermath. The attempted murder charges against surviving Panthers were dropped. Families sued. After years of litigation, a settlement was reached in 1982. $1.85 million split among the survivors and Hampton's family. But no one was charged with murder. No FBI agent was prosecuted. William O'Neill was never charged as an accomplice. He died in 1990, running into traffic on a highway, officially ruled suicide. Fred Hampton was 21 years old when the FBI helped kill him. Hampton's assassination was COINTELPRO at its most extreme, but the program's reach extended far beyond the Panthers. Target 1, Martin Luther King Jr., and SCLC. The FBI's COINTELPRO operation against King was codenamed Communist Infiltration, but had nothing to do with actual communism. It was personal vendetta dressed as counterintelligence. Tactics used against King: bugged hotel rooms during travels, recorded personal conversations, sent recordings to King's wife, sent the suicide letter, attempted to prevent King from meeting with Pope Paul VI, tried to prevent King from receiving the Nobel Prize, fed negative stories to media, tried to replace King with a more moderate leader the FBI could control, monitored and harassed King until his assassination in 1968. Even after King's assassination, the FBI continued COINTELPRO operations against SCLC, trying to prevent anyone from effectively replacing him. Target 2, the Black Panther Party. The FBI called the Panthers the greatest threat to the internal security of the country, not because of violence, but because of their community programs. The Panthers' free breakfast program fed thousands of children. Their free health clinics provided care to underserved communities. Their education programs taught Black history and encouraged political engagement. These programs were popular. They built community support. They showed government wasn't meeting people's needs, and that terrified Hoover. FBI tactics against Panthers. Over 233 separate COINTELPRO actions documented. Coordinated raids resulting in dozens of deaths. The Fred Hampton assassination. Encouraging violence between chapters. Planting weapons to justify arrests. Infiltrators in every chapter. Constant surveillance of all leaders. Trials that drained resources. Most charges were dropped, but the process was the punishment. By 1972, the Panthers were destroyed, not by their own failures, but by systematic FBI disruption. Target 3, anti-war movement. As the Vietnam War expanded, so did opposition. Students, veterans, clergy, professionals, millions opposed the war. Hoover saw them all as potential subversives. Groups targeted. Students for a Democratic Society, SDS. Vietnam veterans against the war. Clergy and laymen concerned about Vietnam. Women strike for peace. Tactics. Infiltrators who encouraged violence to discredit peaceful protesters. False media stories about protesters claimed they were spitting on soldiers, though many cases were fabricated. Encouraging university to expel activist students. Creating fake radical groups to divert energy from effective organizing. IRS audits of anti-war organizations. Target 4, women's liberation movement. Yes, even the women's movement. The FBI saw feminism as subversive. COINTELPRO, operations targeted. National Organization for Women Now. Various women's liberation groups. Feminist publications. The FBI particularly focused on radical feminist groups, trying to paint the entire movement as anti-family and anti-American. Target 5, American Indian Movement AIM. Native American activists seeking treaty rights and opposing land theft faced COINTELPRO tactics. The 1973 Wounded Knee occupation was met with FBI-coordinated military-style response. FBI informants infiltrated AIM. Leaders were imprisoned on questionable charges. Internal conflicts were encouraged. Target 6, the New Left generally. Anyone associated with 1960s counterculture faced potential COINTELPRO operations. Socialist groups. Communist Party USA, the original target. Various youth movements. Alternative media outlets. Civil liberties organizations. If you challenged the status quo, you were a target. For 15 years, COINTELPRO operated in complete secrecy. Then in 1971, a break-in changed everything. The Citizens Commission. In March 1971, a group of activists calling themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI broke into the FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania. They were a professor, a taxi driver, a daycare center operator, a few others. Most identities remained secret until 2014. They spent months planning. They watched the office. They timed the guards. They waited for a night when everyone would be distracted. They chose the night of the Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier fight. They picked the lock, spent hours photographing documents, then mailed copies to newspapers and Congress. The documents. What the stolen documents revealed. The word COINTELPRO appeared repeatedly. Memos describing operations against peaceful activists. Instructions to enhance paranoia in target groups. Orders to neutralize leaders. Proof of illegal surveillance and harassment. The media had the proof. The FBI could no longer deny it. The FBI response. Initially, the FBI tried to dismiss it as isolated incidents, but journalists kept digging. More documents leaked. Senate committees started investigating. In 1976, the Church Committee, Senate Select Committee to Study Governmental Operations, conducted a comprehensive investigation. Their findings confirmed COINTELPRO operations from 1956-971. Thousands of operations against American citizens. Systematic violation of constitutional rights. No judicial oversight. Often no Attorney General oversight. Hoover operated as an independent power. The justification. When questioned, FBI officials claimed they were fighting communism and preventing violence. But the Church Committee found most targets were peaceful activists. Many had no connection to foreign powers. The FBI created more violence than it prevented. The goal wasn't law enforcement, it was political control. The exposure should have led to accountability. Instead, it led to reforms that don't prevent modern versions of the same tactics. Limited accountability. Despite overwhelming evidence of crimes, prosecutions were minimal. No one went to jail for COINTELPRO operations. Some agents were disciplined administratively. No high-level FBI officials faced charges. Hoover had died in 1972, escaping any accountability. The only significant prosecution was of Mark Felt, later revealed as Watergate's deep throat for authorizing break-ins. He was convicted, then pardoned by President Reagan. The reforms. In response to COINTELPRO revelations, Congress passed Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, requiring warrants for domestic surveillance. Attorney General Guidelines, restricting FBI domestic operations. Congressional oversight expansion. But these reforms had loopholes, big ones. Post 9/11, COINTELPRO 2. After September 11, 2001, many COINTELPRO-era tactics returned, rebranded as counterterrorism. Surveillance. NSA mass surveillance, revealed by Edward Snowden. FBI increased use of informants in Muslim communities. FISA court approves 99% plus of warrant requests, rubber stamp. Infiltration. FBI informants in mosques, sometimes encouraging plots they then foil. Agents provocateur in protest movements. Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter. Undercover operations in environmental and animal rights groups. Disruption. No-fly lists used to pressure potential informants. Material support for terrorism charges applied broadly. Social media, monitoring and disruption. Parallels to COINTELPRO. Targeting based on ideology religion, rather than evidence of crimes. Creating threats to justify budgets, informants encouraging plots. Disproportionate focus on Muslim communities and black activists. Minimal oversight despite nominal reforms. Black identity extremists. In 2017, the FBI created a new category, Black identity extremists. A leaked document suggested the FBI was monitoring black activists similar to COINTELPRO era. The category was supposedly retired after backlash, but FBI surveillance of Black Lives Matter activists continued, raising questions about whether COINTELPRO tactics ever really ended. COINTELPRO destroyed lives, some victims' stories. Martin Luther King Jr. While we can't know if FBI harassment contributed to his assassination, we know it caused immense stress. King suffered from depression partly due to constant surveillance and threats. The suicide letter traumatized him. His family lived in fear. Jean Seberg. The FBI's smear campaign destroyed her career and mental health. She attempted suicide on the anniversary of the baby's death, caused by premature labor, possibly stress-induced by FBI harassment. She succeeded in 1979. Fred Hampton. dead at 21, a leader who could have continued organizing for decades. His son, Fred Hampton, Jr., grew up without a father because the FBI decided his father was too effective. Countless others, activists who went to prison on false charges, families torn apart by paranoia the FBI deliberately created, careers destroyed by being labeled subversive, mental health destroyed by constant harassment, relationships ruined by FBI interference. The broader cost: what movements were prevented? What progress was delayed? How much did FBI disruption slow civil rights advancement? We'll never know. But we know COINTELPRO's goal was exactly that: to slow progress, to prevent change, to maintain the status quo. And it worked, at least partially. The Panthers were destroyed. The anti-war movement was discredited. Leaders were imprisoned or killed, and the FBI faced minimal consequences. Let's look at actual COINTELPRO directives, declassified in public. August 25, 1967 memo. The purpose of this new counterintelligence endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of black nationalist, hate-type organizations and groupings, their leadership, spokesmen, membership, and supporters. Note: black nationalist was FBI code for any black activist group they didn't like. The Panthers, who advocated community self-defense and social programs, were labeled hate-type organizations. March 4, 1968 memo on MLK. Prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. Malcolm X might have been such a messiah. He is the martyr of the movement today. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, and Elijah Muhammad all aspire to this position. This memo, written 1 month before King's assassination, explicitly identifies him as someone to prevent from rising. The FBI wanted to stop a peaceful civil rights leader from becoming too influential. 1968 directive. For maximum effectiveness of the counterintelligence program and to prevent wasted effort, long-range goals are being set. Goals included: 1. Prevent militant groups from gaining respectability. 2. Prevent the rise of a leader who could unify. 3. Prevent violence, ironic, given FBI encouraged violence. 4. Prevent groups from recruiting. 5. Prevent alliances between groups. Translation: keep movements weak, divided, leaderless, and discredited. On April 28, 1971, FBI Director Hoover ordered COINTELPRO officially ended, not because of moral awakening, but because it had been exposed. The Citizens Commission's break-in made continuing too risky. But here's what we know from declassified documents and subsequent revelations. The infrastructure remained: informant networks, surveillance capabilities, relationships with local police, legal justifications prepared. The targets shifted: from communists to terrorists, from Black Panthers to Black Lives Matter, from anti-war protesters to Occupy Wall Street, from political dissidents to domestic extremists. The justification stayed the same: national security, preventing violence, protecting America. But COINTELPRO proved that these justifications are covers for political control. The FBI wasn't preventing violence, it was preventing change. It wasn't protecting America, it was protecting a specific version of America that Hoover preferred. J. Edgar Hoover ran the FBI for 48 years. He built files on everyone. He answered to no one. And he used America's premier law enforcement agency to wage war on Americans exercising their constitutional rights. COINTELPRO officially ended in 1971. The Church Committee investigated. Reforms were promised. Oversight was supposedly strengthened. But Fred Hampton is still dead. Seberg is still dead. Martin Luther King lived under FBI harassment until he was killed. Countless activists were imprisoned, harassed, or destroyed. And the people who did this, they retired with pensions. They were never prosecuted, some were even honored. The files are declassified now. You can read the memos. You can see the suicide letter to MLK. You can read the orders to neutralize activists. It's all public record. But declassification isn't justice. Transparency isn't accountability. And knowing the truth doesn't bring back the dead. COINTELPRO officially ended. But the mindset that created it, that dissenters are enemies, that surveillance is security, that the FBI knows better than citizens what America should be, that mindset never went away. It just learned to be more careful about getting caught.